And you probably thought that Muyakani is not going to be here tonight.
Missing in action.
Missing in action, but finally he is here.
Absolutely.
And of course, it's time for us to get to the conversation. As earlier mentioned, George won't be joining us tonight, but of course, he is watching.
He is
and
watching.
Contributing as well.
He's watching, podcast. Always.
Yes. And as I had mentioned earlier on, the conversation is on TB. Creating awareness, but above everything, just joining in this talk of saying that, together we can end TB, because that was the theme, continues to be the theme until we celebrate the next World TB Day. That is on every 24th of March. And so Sunday, this was the celebration. And of course, we get to this conversation tonight, just getting to know what will it take for us to address this concern. We have said that it's important that we engage the leadership. We make sure that we increase the investment, so that, of course, we also get, individuals that are diagnosed to have, faster uptake of medication, so that together we can join in to make sure that we end this menace. So we come to you, Victor Muyakani. At least say jumbo to the people.
Oh, yes. Well, you said jumbo. Jumbo to the people. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you once again this Tuesday. Well done on the news. Well done. Excellent.
Thank you.
Well put. Good people, TB is a problem that a lot of us deal with. If you haven't dealt with yourself, you know somebody that's dealing with it. It's interesting that this is a very, very, very old disease. It's been recorded since time immemorial. But in this day and age, we're still fighting it. And in this day and age, a lot of people still have very little awareness of what's going on. Well, tonight, we hope to change that a little bit. We want to bring the conversation to you. And by that, we mean we would like you to participate in this conversation. Here's how. Our producers are going to put an SMS line, which is actually there on your screen. They're also going to put a WhatsApp line, which will come directly to me. And they're also going to put a phone number, which we will be putting on the screen, and you will be able to call in later on with your questions. Because tonight we have medical personnel, we have a champion, a survivor. Francis is here in the building. He's fought TB, he's succeeded, and he's here to tell his story. We also have people who have first-hand knowledge and insight about this old disease that we're trying to fight in new and newer ways. Good people, welcome. The People's Court is in session. The subject matter is TB, modern fight against an ancient disease. And we're saying in 2030, that is the goal. The United Nations, they are focused on making sure that we end the TB epidemic. Absolutely. It is possible. It's possible. The guests this evening. Brilliant, brilliant. Now, starting with on my left, we'll start from the back and then we come to the front. We have Anne Fraser Maina, karibu sana. You are a clinician and you specialize in TB. Yes. Karibu sana, Anne Fraser. Thank you. Should we call you Anne Fraser or just Anne? Anne. Anne. No, but Anne Fraser sounds nice. Karibu, karibu sana. Thank you very much. Say hi to your people at home. Hi, my family and my friends. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I hope she followed the cue from you, because you said I told you to say jumbo and you said jumbo. Yes. And I say to your people, she's saying hi to the people. We follow instructions. Yeah. It's important. The people from my village would have taken that salam's opportunity much better. But it's all right. Next, we have Martin Bayer, who's also a clinician. Karibu, Martin. Yeah, nashukuru sana. Karibu sana. Thank you for having me. Piga salams kwa watu wa nyumbani. Habari zenu. A pleasure to be here. Excellent. I hope to have a good conversation. Excellent. Yes, yes. Short and sweet. I like that. Thank you very much. And then we have Stephen Sewe. Karibu sana. Thank you very much. Yes. Salams kidogo. Hi, friends and family. All right. He is a clinical dietitian. Now, yours is the shortest and the sweetest. Then we have a gentleman here, the champion here, Francis Mukirai. Karibu sana. Please, unatoka wapi? Say hi, salams to the people at home. Mike, please. Mike. Asante sana. Mimi naitwa Francis, natoka Kabete Mwamto. Aha. Shika mic vizuri tafadhali. Wote Mwamto yote. Yes. Watawagi wote wananijua na wasalimu. Mwamto yote, kwa kahawa, kwa roda, Jopet, kunaitwaje? Ulikuwa unaishi huko? No, I know this. I know some places. Oh, sawa. Kitusuru market everywhere. Yeah, Majifiti. Awesome. Karibu sana. Asante sana. Thank you. And last but not least, Evelyn Kibuchi. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. You wear many hats. You are the Chief National Coordinator of the Stop TB Partnership of Kenya. You're also board member of the International Union Against Tuberculosis and Lung Disease. And I believe these are just a few of what you do, or the things you do. Karibu sana. Say hi to the people at home.
Thank you very much, and hi to all my family and friends who are watching me. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. Good people, with that, the People's Court is in session. Shall we begin?
Yes, we shall.
Take it away.
Of course, it's important that we get to this very important conversation. We've already told them how to interact with us.
Oh, yes.
And so we just want to be guided by the theme and a bit of statistics here, where we are looking at 1.3 million number of people who died from TB in 2022, and TB being the second leading infectious killer after COVID-19. And global efforts to combat TB have saved an estimated about 75 million lives since the year 2000. And of course, we're looking at $13 billion that is actually needed globally for TB prevention and diagnosis, treatment, as well as care to achieve the global target that is agreed. That is where we get to end TB come 2030. Yes, that is the main goal of the United Nations, and that should tell you that this is not just about the country. Perhaps we're going to expound the conversation further, looking at about 40% of Kenyans as well back here who are infected with tuberculosis, and these cases were undetected. That is the most unfortunate thing, and of course that's untreated. And we're looking at about 97,126 new cases of TB that are being reported in the country. That's a lot. Of course, by the year 2023 alone, or actually in 2023 alone. That should tell you that we actually need to be careful in this case and create more awareness, as well as raise public concern in relation to this. And the most important thing is the effort that we're going to put around in relation to this. I think it's important that we start off, with Francis, who is seated right next to us.
Yes.
Francis atupatie at least story yake na tuberculosis, and the fact that we can now stand here and say that, he is a survivor and a champion. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Francis.
Ilianzia wapi? How did it start, please?
Mara kwanza nimekunywa hizo dawa za TB mara mbili.
Kwanza tuanzie mwanzo kabisa. Yes, ulipataje TB ama ulijuaje umepata TB? Mwanzo kabisa.
Mwanzo kabisa nilijua nimepata TB kwa kuwa nikiamka nasikia uchovu. Nilikuwa mtu wa kukunywa.
Shika mic tafadhali.
Sasa nilikuwa nafikiria ni pombe inatuma nisikie kuchokelea tu, kuchoka hivi. Ikakuwa sasa nikiamka asubuhi na kunywa kidogo na nikasikia form, nikiwa form poa. Sasa naweza kazi. Kaendelea hivyo, sasa nikaanza kuwezeka kabisa. Ndio sasa mwili ikakuwa ina nguvu, nikaishiwa na nguvu kabisa, nikaenda hospitali.
Ilikuchukua muda gani hivi kuanzia wakati ule unaanza kusikia kuchoka na kukosa nguvu hadi wakati ule ukaenda hospitali?
Sema tuka mwezi moja.
Ukajikaza kwa mwezi mzima
kabisa. Lakini ile siku ile nishika mara moja tu na nikaishiwa na nguvu hadi nikapelekwa hospitali. Nilikuwa bado na sweat usiku. Afikiria tu ni ile mambo ya pombe. Sasa nilikuja nikaishiwa na nguvu, ndio nikaenda hospitali.
Okay. So wewe ndio huyo umepelekwa hospitali, umefika pale, wanakuambia nini? Wanafanya test za aina gani? Unahisi namna gani?
Ile sasa nilienda nikijiambia tu ni malaria. Nikaenda nikapimwa, nikaambiwa sio malaria. Nikaandikiwa karatasi. Niende nitoe kohozi. Ile kohozi kwenda nikutolewa, vyenye nilitolewa ikaenda kwa testiwa, nikapatikana sasa ni zile virusi za TB.
Ulisikia aje? Kwanza kabla ya hapo ulikuwa unajua mambo ya TB?
Sikuwa najua.
Sasa wamekuambia TB, unajihisi namna gani? Wamekuambia bwana we una TB.
Ikuwa tu nimestuka. Ikakuwa sasa nianze matibabu. Lakini venye nilianza matibabu nilikunywa hizo dawa kama mwezi moja na nikarudia pombe bado.
Ulikuwa umeambiwa kwamba usitumie pombe?
Na sigara bado sikuacha. Lakini kabla ya mwezi moja nilirudia pombe. Nikaendelea na zile dawa mpaka siku ya mwisho nikamaliza. lakini ile kitu haikunitoka ndani. After kitu 4 months, ama tuseme miezi 6 hapo, ile kitu ikanirudia tena na nguvu zaidi. Ambapo sasa nilipelekwa mpaka Tigoni.
Unajua nini Mr. Francis? Historia yako ni nzuri sana. Na nahisi kama watu wa nyumbani wanahitaji kusikia vizuri sana. Kwa sababu nashuku kwamba kuna watu wengi ambao wako katika mahali ambapo wewe ulikuwepo. Lakini huu ujumbe wako utakuwa ni muhimu sana waupate. Sasa nataka tuchukue break kidogo, break fupi. Good people, we want to take a short break. And then tukirudi, Francis, nataka sasa utuandalie hadithi sawasawa. Ila watu wa nyumbani nataka muwe tayari. Send in your questions. Francis anatuambia story yake. If you have a similar experience, if you have a similar a person who is in your life, mtu ambaye anapitia kitu ambacho Francis anasema, naomba uzingatie, ututumie message. WhatsApp number iko kwenye screen right now. The WhatsApp number is ready. Send us the WhatsApp. I will handle it right here. If you have SMSs, send them to us right now. But before, Francis, we want to come back to you in a bit. Wacha tukupe muda kidogo. Tutarudi kwa kunataka story yako kwanza itokee tu kisawasawa.
Mimi nafikiria now that you have engaged the people back at home.
Yes.
Watuambie symptoms and signs. I think it is important to hear from the medic. Tusikie tu what are the signs and symptoms first.
Yes, actually that's a very, very good idea. We were trying to
look out for,
create space for that. So yeah, good idea. Fantastic.
Martin.
So Martin, please tell us. The symptoms that our brother Francis is talking about, are they familiar to you? And talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Thank you again for having me. Actually, if you just listen to what he started by saying, the main issue that he had is this lethargy, unaona, kuishiwa na nguvu, you know. And then the other thing that he mentioned was night sweats. You see, kuishiwa na nguvu is just common to me and you. You know, ukiishiwa na nguvu unasema maybe nilikuwa job nimechapa sana, maybe nimetembea sana. You know, you'll always get reasons as to why you're tired, you know. And then sweating, of course, we'll think everybody sweats at night. I mean, kuna joto sana. So you will actually not think about TB as the first thing. So that tells you that some of the TB symptoms are not very classic. You will not get like a classic TB symptoms. And it's important that some of the symptoms that I'll mention, if you find you have any of them, it's important for you to get screened, because the symptoms, as I said, are not very specific for TB. It could be just unajazia, unaona, ni vitu za kawaida. So the commonest symptom though is a cough, and we are talking about a cough of any duration. Usikae pale mwezi moja, sasa ndio uanze kufikiria acha nikimbie hospitali nikaangaliwe TB. Umekohoa siku 2-3, please, it's always good to go to the hospital for you to go and get screened for TB. So that is one of the major symptoms and sign. And then the other one is night sweats. Unapata unalala kwa kitanda, ukiamka unapata zile shi zimeloa maji kabisa. You know, that's the second sign of that could be having TB. And this one specifically for adults. And then the other one is losing weight. Na pia una lose appetite. Unapata ulikuwa kilo 80, unafika 70, 60, you know. Yeah, so loss of weight is a very important sign to look for. And the other one is fevers. Unapata joto kila mara, unapata. But if you look at the symptoms that I just talked about, you could actually think that you are having any other. There are many illnesses that could present like that, and that's why early screening and this education that you're having today is very important for people to know that assuming some symptoms is not good. It's always good to go to the hospital if you have any of those signs and symptoms, for you to go and get checked, for you to be screened, because again we know that TB is curable and is preventable as well. So unaona kama Francis angejua mapema, angeenda hospitali, angeanza matibabu mapema, lakini kama vile alituambia alikaa mwezi mzima. And you can imagine at that time akiwa bado mgonjwa, alikuwa bado anaeneza TB. Because we know TB is a droplet infection, sindio? Right. Yeah, so it's always very important for us to detect early and start treatment early.
So to say you have come, you know, close to a person who has TB,
yes,
and maybe you saa imeenezwa kwako. Labda itachukua muda gani until these signs and symptoms begin to manifest?
That's a very there's actually no specific answer to that. It will depend with many things. Number one, it will depend with how long have you been exposed.
Okay.
You know, because for example, if it is somewhat close to me, mwenye tunaishi kwa nyumba moja, tunalala pamoja, and the house is not very well ventilated, meaning that the TB bacilli are there for long, then it means that I have a higher chance of contracting TB, right? Then the other thing will be my immunity. For example, if I have another condition that weakens my immunity, then it means that I'm at a higher risk of getting TB than someone else who has a better immunity than me.
Right.
You know, yeah. So, so there are quite a number of things that really we put in consideration. There is no specific time that you would say for sure. This is the time that after getting TB, yeah. But the good thing is that we know for sure that the moment somebody is diagnosed with TB, and they are started on treatment, it only takes around 2 weeks for them to stop being infectious. And that's actually why we encourage a lot on early diagnosis and treatment, because the moment that person starts on treatment, then of course everybody is safe, including themselves.
So let us be clear that the moment one of you has been diagnosed with TB, msianze kuhama nyumba ati now the fears and all this.
There are quite a number of There are quite a number of things that needs to be done, especially if someone is diagnosed in the family with TB.
Right.
And one of the things that is very critical is actually putting the people who are exposed on TB preventive treatment.
Okay.
You know, they can actually, as long as you're exposed on someone who has TB, then it's important the contact people they are put on TB preventive treatment.
Hold it there, Dr. Yes. We'll come back to more on the treatment and basically the people around you. Let's engage the rest. And Frecia, what are the key responsibilities then of a clinician in managing tuberculosis?
As a clinician, the first role of a clinician is to do the screening. Because this patient will most of the time be coming with probably even different symptoms. Like for him, if a clinician was to find him, if that clinician is not well enlightened on what TB could be, that the patient who could have been missed. So for a clinician, we are empowered to do the screening. So we ask these questions from the patient. Do you have these symptoms, like Dr. has mentioned? So that if a patient answers yes to either of these questions, then we are able to think, could it be TB, and go ahead and investigate. So for us is to screen, and then from there we send out for the investigations. Now from the investigation where the patient has been confirmed to have TB, then we put on treatment, and then they are followed up in a TB clinic now from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And in this time and age, or perhaps at this moment, Victor Moyakani, where we are talking about, awareness and prevention, let's loop you in, Evelyn, in relation to the same. Just what got you into this space of advocating and championing against tuberculosis?
Thank you very much. My interest in tuberculosis came when I realized that TB was a bigger problem than I thought previously before I started working on TB. By the time I was starting to work in TB, there was very limited response to tuberculosis. For example, there were no engagement or recognition of the power of persons who have been infected with tuberculosis. We had not even recognized the role that members of parliament, for example, and the political leadership can play in addressing TB at the country level.
Okay.
We also had massive abuse of human rights for TB patients, where, for example, you found that people lost their jobs because they were diagnosed with tuberculosis. We've even seen women who are divorced or sent away back to their family because they had TB, because they were told TB is not in our lineage, you're the one who came with it.
Right.
We also realized that TB cannot be fought by the medical fraternity alone. We need to bring other sectors over and above the Ministry of Health, because TB becomes TB when the patient steps on the frame of the hospital. Before then, it's a social problem. It's a social problem because this person is at home, he or she is infecting others without their knowledge. It's a social problem because they are living in an environment that is encouraging more spread of tuberculosis, for example, poorly ventilated houses. It's a social problem because the level of awareness among the general public was low, and it still remains very low. And we also realized that the media were not really playing the part in creating awareness about tuberculosis. We also had, I would say, very outdated technology from diagnosis, from treatment, and therefore advocacy came in to ensure that there is a good environment, good policy environment, and we have the adequate resources from both the government and also donor government, donor stakeholders, to ensure that we have adequate resources for TB response. As you rightly put it at the beginning, that TB became the leading infectious killer. Actually, it overtook HIV back in 2014. It's only that COVID came, and now COVID, came ahead of HIV. But TB since 2014 has been the leading infectious killer. And allow me to mention a little bit about where we are as a country. Kenya is among the countries globally that carry the highest burden of tuberculosis. In Africa, we are rated 4th. We have South Africa, we have Nigeria, we have Ethiopia, and then we have Kenya coming in number 4. And if you look at the HIV rates, they also follow that order in Africa. And it hits us, again in Kenya, when we look at the number of lives you're losing to tuberculosis. In 2022 alone, statistics show that we lost 17,000 lives to tuberculosis. And we're saying this is an improvement because in 2019, we lost about 34,000 people to tuberculosis. If you compare that to the number of people we lost to COVID in those 2 years, in COVID for Kenya, we lost about 7,000 people, which is a big number. But when you compare with the number we lose to tuberculosis and the efforts that we give it, then you realize that we are not giving the response that it deserves.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be coming to that, Muyax. Yes, I called you Muyax.
Right.
But all the same, Stephen, you know the reality is that there's not a single time we have spoken about a medical condition here and failed to incorporate a nutritionist. So we therefore acknowledge just how important a nutritionist is. I know we'll be coming back to you so we get to understand what value then you add to this conversation. But allow us to take a quick short break, pay some bills, and then we come back to more on this. Remember, the lines are open. You can always speak to us, and we'll be looking at some of your comments as we continue with the broadcast.
Right.
Na safari hii katika Mfahamu Kiongozi tutakuletea viongozi aina mbalimbali.
Nikuwe na Nisani kama 10 na pia nikuwe menua minibus. Minibus niko niwa.
Kushinda unaangalia simu ya mzee. Soma Biblia ama ingia kwa washroom ujisugue. Mpaka nimetoa hivi.
I don't know whether any of my children would want to get into the political field. Sijajua bado.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30 kuendelea.
Join us on a journey through the concrete jungles and rising skylines, where every beam, every nail tells a story of progress and vision.
In every aspect of life, you have to look at several dynamics.
From groundbreaking.
Nowadays with the tech, you can check on different websites or you check online and you can see some inspiration. So at least that one would be a direction already. I'll know like what kind of style you're going for.
To finishing touches, witness the dedication of the hard-working teams who bring these ambitious dreams to reality. The Realtor, Tuesdays at 6:30 p.m.
Right, karibu sana. If you're joining us right now, this is the People's Court, and tonight we're talking about TB. It's all about TB awareness. It's all about real stories of real champions who fought TB and are here to tell the story. But we also have good people from the medical field, good people from the advocacy field who are here to tell us more about this so that we are all educated about TB. Now, some of you are actually watching. I asked you at the beginning, we said the WhatsApp number is on your screen right now. The SMS number is also on your screen. The call number is also on your screen. Take those numbers, and a little bit later on we shall be receiving the calls, but I can see some people have already started to send messages. Scholastica says, wow, the show is lit, iko fine. I think the community champion could be there, like yourself. She says, Scholastica says, she's a TB champion in her community, and she's also a community mobilizer. She says she's been working in something called contact tracing. That's something you guys can help us out, the medics in the field. And then she says she's also been living with HIV since birth. I believe there's a connection there. I think there's a question you can help us to understand a little bit more. And she says we should welcome her to advocate about HIV and TB. That's Scholastica. Scholastica, we will invite you. Leave your contacts right there. I told you, if you send a message, I will read it. We also have somebody else, anaitwa 1 GB, 1 gigabyte, says, mimi ni one of the victims, niko under medication. Please ambia huyo champion, ashike mic vizuri nimsikie, anaweza niokolea. Right, champion unasikia, watu wanahitaji sana kusikia story yako.
Tumempatia mic nyingine,
sasa una mic nyingine, hakuna kushika, bomoa story. Fululiza kabisa tusikize. Jackson Juma says, hello, I'm Jackson Juma from Nairobi. My father is suffering from TB. Amejaribu hizo dawa lakini sioni tofauti. Mnaweza tusaidia aje? Okay? That's Jackson Juma. So that's where we are. I think the others
we'll be reading the others later.
Yeah, but let's bring in, first of all, Mr. Sewe, karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I want us to hear this story. There's something I want you to jump in. Listen to the story of Francis, and then we'll come back to you as you jump in, especially around the subject of what he was eating or what he was consuming at the time. So ndugu Francis, so story tuliachia wapi? Wewe umeenda hospitali, umepimwa, umepatikana una TB, ukapewa dawa.
Nimekunywa dawa.
Na umekunywa dawa mwezi ngapi? Mwezi mmoja ama miezi miwili? Miezi sita.
Yote nimemaliza.
Umemaliza?
Lakini sikuacha kunywa pombe.
Pombe bado
na meza dawa na kunywa pombe.
Ama unameza dawa na pombe?
Zote sasa. Kuchanganya.
Okay, alafu sigara pia unatumia?
Miezi sita nilikuwa najichanganya, unaona.
Aha, okay.
Hata time za dawa hazilingani, saa zingine inalingana na vyenye natoka kwa baa. Natoka saa 6 ndio nakunywa, natoka saa 4 ndio nakunywa dawa.
Okay.
Sasa mpaka miezi 6.
Miezi 6 ukamaliza dose. Mwanzo dose ilikuwa muda gani? Dose ilikuwa ya miezi 6.
6.
So ukamaliza. Lakini umemaliza dose, unahisi namna gani kwa mwili wakati huo?
Nasikia bado niko sawa. After kitu 5 months 6 months hapo, bado mwili kaanza kureduce weight. Kusweat tena, kuishiwa nguvu. Asubuhi na kohoa. Sasa kitu kama wiki mbili sasa nguvu ikaisha kabisa, na nikapelekwa hospitali. Tena Wangige. Pelekwa Wangige, ndio wakasema ni pneumonia.
Okay.
Pneumonia ikakuwa si pneumonia. Nikapelekwa Tigoni. Tigoni ndio sasa ikapatikana ni TB. TB sasa wakaniuliza ni wapi naweza tibiwa haraka. Hadi nikiwa karibu nikasema ni Wangige. Ndio sasa ndio kapatikana na nikapata madaktari wenye tunapelekana mzuri.
Lakini sasa TB imerudi kwa mara ya pili chini ya mwaka mmoja. Sasa wewe unahisi namna gani? Kuna maswali unajiuliza, unahisi namna gani ugonjwa umerudi mara ya pili? Na
sasa yule daktari mwenye aliniambia ni TB mara nyingine, hizo maswali nilimuuliza. Akamwambia, nikamuuliza juu mimi nilikunywa dawa mpaka miezi 6 ikaisha, mbona hii kitu imenirudia tena? Sasa akaniambia hii kitu au kuacha zile vitu uliambiwa au kufuatilia madawa vyenye ilifaa ukunywe. Kaniambia kama dawa ni saa 3, umake sure unakunywa na meza hiyo dawa saa 3. Wakati unafail kumeza hizo dawa, ile masaa ulianza, hizi germs zinazaananga haraka 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 hazitawezwa na ile dawa. Kwa hivyo uwe keep time ya kumeza zile dawa. Na kitu kama pombe uachane. Kama ulikuwa unavuta sigara, at least ujaribu kupunguza. Kama hata hautaweza, at least ujaribu kupunguza. Sasa nilifuatilia hiyo maneno. Na wale madaktari nipata pale Wangige, tulipelekana nao vizuri. Na wakakuwa wananifuatilia kila mara mpaka kunitembelea kwa nyumba. Sasa mimi nilikuwa naweka ile masaa. Kama mimi sasa niliweka saa 3:30 ndio nitakuwa nikimeza dawa. Nilikuwa na make sure exactly saa 3:30 ikifika dawa na meza. Nimekula, nimekunywa dawa. Paka sasa nikatoboa. Na madaktari wakanifuatilia pole. Na sasa nimeweza.
So mara ya pili ulimeza dawa kwa muda gani?
Miezi 6 tu.
Miezi 6?
Yeah.
Na ukamaliza?
Kabisa.
Na mwili ulijisikiaje baada ya miezi 6 hii awamu ya pili?
Hii dawa wakati unafuatilia mzuri, hata mwezi mmoja usharikava. Nasikia uko sawa. Naacha kukohoa, nguvu zinaanza kurudi. Tuseme unachangamka.
Okay.
Sasa ukijidanganya ati umerudiwa na nguvu, wachane na dawa, ile ugonjwa bado inakufuata. Sasa mimi ile kitu naweza ambia mtu asisikie amepata nguvu aache dawa. Ameze dawa mpaka miezi 6 hii iishe. Na ambiwe na daktari uacha sasa dawa. Umefika mwisho. Umefika mwisho.
Una muda gani tangu uache dawa?
Sasa huu ni naenda mwaka wa 3.
Kupoa kabisa 100%.
Kabisa.
Kwa hivyo TB ina tiba. Tunakubaliana hapo.
Kabisa.
Aya, sawa. You had a question for the nutritionist of the day.
Yes, indeed. Mr. Sewe, when you're a person in a position like Francis, first of all, what would you supply as a diet guideline when you're taking the TB medicine for 6 months? What is it that he should have been taking? What is it that he shouldn't have been taking to help him to get better in a much more complete way?
Thank you very much. The first factor we consider in nutrition is the nutrition status. Basically, the nutrition status is the status of the body as influenced by the nutrients you take daily, the foods you take, probably you take 3 meals or 2 meals. Okay? So nutrition plays 2 roles in TB management. Number 1, nutrition can be preventative towards the development of active TB. You know, there is the latent TB, whereby you have the infection, but there are no symptoms.
Okay.
So, when you have a good nutrition status, okay, you are able to fight this infection. For example, you have normal protein status, the macronutrients, vitamin A, C, D, are all in the normal ranges. You are able to fight off infections because these nutrients are vital in the fighting of infections. Even before introducing the medications, actually, nutrition plays a pivotal role there. And secondly, as a curative measure, now when you already have the infection, one of the role of nutrition is because actually the medications used in TB can actually cause you to have malnutrition. Your body weight can get diminished.
Oh, really?
Yes.
How's that?
As you heard Daktari say that you lose weight from 80 to 70, unexplained weight loss. You hear about the symptom of TB, weight loss, decreased appetite. So when you have a low appetite, it means definitely you're unable to have that cycle or that motivation to take food. Number 2, when you have something like chest pain, people in pain are unable to find it motivating to eat. Another thing, one of the symptoms of TB is nausea. You see, when you're nauseated, you have that feeling of strong disregard for food. You see food and all you think is, I'll vomit. So that hinders intake of adequate nutrients.
Right.
And lastly, there are also some cases of diarrhea with TB medications, and diarrhea can hinder adequate nutrient absorption. So all of these nutrients, mostly the proteins, Number 2 is the vitamins, especially the vitamin A, vitamin C, D, and there are trace elements like zinc and iron, which are very pivotal in producing an adequate immune response, so that when the body recognizes that there is an infection, the body can quickly mobilize the immunoglobulins to go and fight this infection. In a case where a person has a deficiency of these specific nutrients, your body is unable to trigger that mechanism, or rather, there is delayed mechanism of immune response.
Okay.
Imagine if this response is delayed. You give the TB bacteria time to multiply and cause more harm to the body.
Wow.
So having nutrition as a key factor in preventative and in the cure in the course of the 6 months treatment, less or more, is very elemental.
It's a game changer.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I have a question here. Now, Francis, now I want to bring you in. Kabla upate TB, ulikuwa ushasikia ati mambo ya TB? Ulikuwa unajua kuna ugonjwa wa TB?
Nilikuwa nasikia kuna.
Lakini ulikuwa unauelewa kabla upate? Okay.
Sikuwa naelewa.
Listening to this, how important is awareness? And what gaps exist in awareness in our people that are actually causing TB to spread faster or more than it should?
Yeah, awareness plays a very, very important role in seeking treatment, seeking care, and also prevention. However, I think in Kenya we are still very low in levels of awareness about tuberculosis. A study was conducted last year, and it was found that most people, 60% of the people who went to seek TB services had not heard about TB before.
60%?
60%. That is really shocking. And I want us to think about COVID time. We were told about COVID every time we were told about COVID. Any building you went to, at the entrance, there were instructions about COVID. Masks.
Sanitizers.
There's actually a new variant, and so we need to be careful. I know that has been said as well, so we actually need to be extremely careful at this point.
In fact, maybe it should be a topic for another show.
I mean.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe, probably. Yes, and the media, the healthcare workers, even international media, every day we heard about COVID. We knew about the signs and symptoms.
Yeah.
We knew where to seek treatment. We knew what to eat. You know, we even started self-medication. You know, the dietitian will talk about it, self-medication and in its harm. But that is lacking in tuberculosis. And how it plays a part, you know, lack of awareness is if you do not know what you're suffering from, or if you don't know what you're suffering from, you are likely to delay in seeking treatment. But if he knew, for example, that what we're suffering from could be TB, he could not have waited that long. So we find that what people do, they first go over the counter, they self-medicate themselves, and that takes a bit of time. Within that period, when they're self-medicating themselves, they are likely to be infecting other people. So that means they're spreading the disease further. Again, people also take so long, especially men, even to just go to hospital and say, this is how I'm feeling, because they do not know what they're suffering from. Number 2, they do not know that the disease they are suffering from is infectious. So you find that you have somebody who has TB, they have not sought medication, but if they are students, for example, they are still going to that class. If it's somebody who is traveling by matatu, every day he wakes up, gets into a matatu, maybe from Kawangware, goes to town and back, he still has the cough, right? He's not wearing a mask. How many people is he likely to infect in just one trip because of lack of awareness? And the biggest problem is that we are not investing in that creating awareness. And that's when at the beginning I said low funding levels is such a problem. We need to put a lot of investment in creating awareness, because to me, that would be the beginning of ending TB.
Actually, Evelyn, there's a comment here, and it speaks directly to what you're saying. A gentleman by the name of Wilberforce from Nakuru says, hi, is TB awareness only in urban centers or in rural. Because recently I was in the village, and to my shock, people are dying. When you ask, you're told he died of TB because she was diagnosed and started treatment very late. This is Wilberforce from Nakuru. He's saying the same thing you're saying. He's backing it up.
Yes. And unfortunately, we just seem to think about TB in the month of March. You see, you've called us here because World TB Day was on a Sunday.
Yes.
Or was on Sunday. Yeah. Supposing we did this every week for the 52 weeks that we have in a year, so that the message does not just get to the people in Nairobi or in Nakuru, the message gets into the people in Mandera, in Turkana. We need to really invest in creating awareness.
And we'll be coming to that, just get to understand how do we create awareness and engage the communities. Dr. Before we come to you briefly, and Freshia, how do you approach the aspect of diagnosis, I'm imagining, and treatment, especially to patients who have zero idea of what is going on, or perhaps have heard about TB, and sometimes they would want to align that with HIV and AIDS, and then the fear and the stigma that revolves around that. And now getting this person to understand that here we are, this is the condition, this is the situation, and you have to begin treatment almost immediately.
When we get these cases of people who present to us with symptoms like that are suggesting we have TB, then you have to explain to the patient. Otherwise, if you fail at explaining to the patient at the beginning, they start asking questions. I could have, maybe you had there is a cough of any duration. So I've come to you, I've coughed for 2 days. And then you're telling me TB, and I hear TB is a disease that kills, or all those based out in the community. So if you don't take time as a clinician to explain to the patient why you suspect it's TB, what you're supposed to do, the steps to follow, then you're sure maybe the patient may not adhere to their treatment when you diagnose them. So it starts with the education that you give to the patient. We encourage probably even a health talk outside of the clinics when they are in the waiting bay, so that they are aware that when I get into the clinical room, then I might be asked about tuberculosis. So when you ask them now when they're in your clinical room, they already are aware that I was told that might be asked that question. And then now it comes, you have already diagnosed a patient who have TB. Then it starts the journey. You have to explain to them, what drug are you going to be taking? How long are you supposed to take this drug? What are you supposed to stop, and what are you supposed to be taking? So it is a journey. Before you start treatment and you actually make this patient to start treatment and continue to the end, then it's a journey that you have to take. The first two visits of the patient you need to take. They're usually very critical, because there's a point you make or break. A patient may accept to take a treatment to the end, or at that point, if you don't convince them, they start seeking second opinions. You've come to my facility, I've told you have TB, I think that doctor doesn't know what they're doing, so they go to another facility, and unfortunately, they start maybe with the government, they go to the private. When they go to the private, they may not get the right information, though they will stop the TB treatment, only now to come back later when they are very sick, and at that point maybe the lung is already completely damaged, and we end up losing them. So it starts from the point of you telling me from the beginning as a suspect patient, this could be TB, this is where I would have gotten the TB from, so that I can, and as a patient, the patient starts understanding, this is my risk factor. So if you don't start there, the patient is likely not to comply to the medication to the 6 months. It's a long duration. 6 months is not easy. So you have to start the journey with the patient and work with them. Like for Francis is saying, the Daktaris in Wangige took him through. Without that kind of a support, sometimes these patients give up on the way.
Dr. what are some of the notable challenges, as medics, you will get to encounter while treating tuberculosis patients? Even as you tell us, what are some of the, treatment options that are available?
Yeah, so just to add to what Anne was saying, I think also we have a few gaps when it comes to the onboarding process when the client is diagnosed to have TB. And just going back to his story, remember what you was telling us for the first facility where he went, there was a very big difference between the service that he got there, the reception and all that, and the kind of the environment that he got in the second facility changed a lot, actually, even in terms of his adherence. So from the clinical side, we have, I know there are a few issues that may need to be addressed on that aspect, especially the onboarding process. Again, on the same note, I would also take it as a challenge, of course, in terms of the healthcare system, in terms of the onboarding process. And the other thing is, as Anne was saying, you can imagine the length of time that will take with that one client, especially for the first 2 weeks. You may be with a client for more than 30 minutes sometimes, you know. So we are trying to look at our healthcare system. How many clinicians are in the patient clinic to see these patients? You imagine you have like 50 people on the queue just waiting for you, and you are taking 30 minutes with Francis only. So one of the other issues that I know, of course, I know there are a few things that are happening right now, strikes and everything, but that's one of the things that also we want to address in terms of what is the ratio of the patient and the doctor in the facilities. Is a very big gap, and it's a very big challenge, and I hope this one can be addressed. Okay. The other issue also as a challenge I would want to mention in terms of TB treatment is you can imagine getting someone who has no knowledge at all about TB, and you're there trying to give them health education, trying to convince them. Sometimes it may not be as easy because they are coming from a point of no information at all. You know, so, and of course, having no information means probably there have been some myths and misconceptions they have, so you have to debunk that. Sometimes even the acceptance, some of them are in denial, you know, that it is not TB, you know, things like those. And also again, it's not easy to convince someone who has never taken medication for more than maybe 5 days that they are going to take medication for 6 months. For 6 months. You know?
Right. How far can you go in terms of making sure that the contact persons or the persons that they are, you know, the exposed persons,
the immediate environment,
then as well is protected from this? Because there are instances where you tell them come to hospital and they do not show up.
Yeah, very true.
You just let it go?
It's a big challenge, but I think there are some strides that you've made. First of all, we mainly focus on the person who is infected first, because remember, if we contain TB in that person, then we've actually protected so many other people. We have prevented TB getting so many other people. So we first of all have to make sure that that person who is infected is on treatment first. Okay. As we said, within 2 weeks most times the person is not infectious. Okay. Then after that person you go now to the immediate people who they probably stay together, they share bed together in the same house. And that's where now we go and screen for those people for signs and symptoms of TB. Those who are found positive are treated, and those who are found negative are given some TB preventive medication just to ensure that they don't get to the active TB. Right. So exactly, that's I remember we mentioned about case finding, and that's purely what case finding is. You know, you have me who has TB, but then you won't also want to get my contacts, you know, and bring them on board. Treat those who are positive and also give preventive medication to those who are negative.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, as we're talking here, there's some input that's coming from the people who are watching, and some of them are actually questions, some of them are comments from some of the things we're saying here, and I just wish to sample them and we can all respond to them. First is Susan, who's texting from Machakos. Sue from Machakos. She says, hello, good people. I love the topic today. People should know that TB is a killer disease and therefore they must be enlightened. I think we all agree there.
Right.
But she says, at the end of 2021 and the start of 2022, Karibu aende Zayuni. I'm quoting her. It drained me. I lost about 15 kilograms, but after adhering to medicine, I bounced back. Adherence, balanced diet, and prayer is a key once infected. This is Susan from Machakos. Thank you, Susan from Machakos. Somebody else here says, yes, this is Jane. Now, Jane's story is amazing. Jane is from Nakuru and she's a TB champion. She says, in fact, she says she's a TB champion and TB survivor. She says, I asked her, how did you do it? She said, just to follow the instructions of the doctor, but she was down. She says she was down. And you'll talk to us about some of those symptoms. She says her hair was like how a cat looks like. I'm literally quoting Jane from Nakuru. And she was scratching her body and losing weight, no appetite. She says she went from 75 kilos to 45 kilos. She also says when a person coughs 2 to 3 times a day, she advises them to get screened because those are the first symptoms she had. She also says that she started taking TB drugs and then she would feel like she lost energy once she took the TB drugs. She says she couldn't even pick her child up. She also says she took TB drugs for 8 months. And it was terrible because she had constipation, and when it was time to go to the washroom, she had constipation and it was very painful. She says she was crying like a baby. She also says that the first time to take the medicine, she was vomiting. Even water was hard to keep down. But she says, when I swallowed the medicine, and when it stuck in my stomach is when my healing started and I didn't vomit again. This is a story of Jane, who's telling us this. She's from Nakuru. Somebody else here, first of all, you have people who are celebrating you. Someone called Stephen Anguva Shikoli, who's the national coordinator of the Network for TB Champions of Kenya. I believe some of you know him. He says, I'm happy we invited his champions. Right. But Eliza says, thank you for the piece. She had something called MDR type. The doctors, you'll help us understand.
Know the types and all that.
Exactly. She says MDR type, and it's not easy in the village with all the stigma around. But she says she survived thanks to her doctors. That is Eliza. We don't know where you're watching us from, but thank you, Eliza, for that. Now, with this information that we have,
man, we need to breathe.
We need to breathe a bit. When we come back, we're coming back with you and everyone else. Let us contribute to this conversation. Good people of Kenya, or those who are watching from elsewhere, this is it. We have the experts here. We have a champion here, survivor. We have an advocate here. We have all the information that you need. Send in your questions and we'll be able to have them, answer them. This is a conversation we wish for you to participate in so that we can change the statistics, so that we're not dealing with lack of awareness anymore, but we're actually dealing with an informed, so 60% is just unacceptable.
And prevention.
Absolutely. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back after the break.
Na safari hii katika Mfahamu Kiongozi tutakuletea viongozi aina mbalimbali.
Nikuwe na nisani kama 10 na pia nikuwe menua minibus. Minibus nikoniwa.
Kushinda unaangalia simu ya mzee. Soma Biblia ama ingia kwa washroom ujisugue mpaka nimetoa hivi.
I don't know whether any of my children would want to get into the political field. Sijajua bado.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30 kuendelea.
Join us on a journey through the concrete jungles and rising skylines, where every beam, every nail tells a story of progress and vision.
In every aspect of life, you have to look at several dynamics.
From groundbreaking.
Nowadays with the tech, you can check on different websites or you check online and you can see some inspiration. So at least that one would be a direction already. I'll know like what kind of style you're going for.
To finishing touches, witness the dedication of the hard-working teams who bring these ambitious dreams to reality. The Realtor.
Welcome back to the broadcast. If you've been watching us, you know that the conversation is on tuberculosis and just how we get to that point of creating awareness, but of importance, preventive bit of this. And of course, before we took that break, we're just looking at some of the messages that are coming in. Oh my God. We perhaps need to just get to hear Francis and his experience with medication and all that. And even after medication,
absolutely.
Is he back to kunywa kitu bado ama uliacha kabisa, ilibidi uache kabisa?
Hizo ni vitu sasa nimeacha kabisa.
It's a game of the past, eh? Hiyo ni story.
Sasa nimeanza upya.
Uko na family na ulikuwa na family hiyo time ambayo ulikuwa
unapitia? Nilikuwa na family, bado niko naye.
Wife?
Lakini hatuko pamoja, hawayuko hapa sasa. Niko na kijana tu, wife na msichana hawayuko.
Tuambie tu story vile ilikuwa kuishi na watu at that time, kukuja kuambia niko na TB na sasa kupata ile support.
Watu walikutenga, wakati ulipata.
At least walikuwa na kismat, ulikuwa na watu wapoa around wewe.
Nilikuwa na watu wapoa kabisa, hawakunitenga. Walinibeba tu vyenye niko. Juu hata ile kazi nilikuwa nafanya kazi na madhiri. So nilikuwa na watu, naingiana na watu kabisa.
Sasa ilibidi uliendelea tu na mat?
Niliendelea tu.
Upige pause.
Niliendelea tu na mat.
Hauko unaogopa ati utasambaza kitu?
Najua sasa mat unabeba watu wanashuka wengine wakiingia. Sasa una yule mtu ati anashinda hapo.
Okay.
Sasa niliendelea tu na nikajikaza.
So sasa hiyo uko wera bado unapiga?
Hiyo job niliacha.
Niliacha hiyo.
Sasa na hustle.
Unaweza jua ulipata wapi? As in nini labda?
Ni kwa mabaa tu ama kwa hizo mata.
Ama kwa mata.
Sana kwa bar, kwa pombe.
All right, here we go.
Champion. Very good.
All right, nutrition, as Victor Moyakane says, at least we've spoken about, the preventative bit of it and then coming in to eat while you're under medication and thereafter. At least he tells us that he quits alcohol and all that. I mean, what is the importance of nutrition in terms, or just watching out what it is that you consume at this point after medication?
Well, now, basically the most important part is basically the preventative part. And curative, which is during the whole course of TB treatment. Because now having a good nutrition status, that is like having a fighting chance. Your body gives you a fighting chance against a lot of things that medicine that you buy from the pharmacy can't help you out.
What is this that you would consider as good in terms of recommendation for dietary recommendations, specific ones? Don't eat this, avoid this, take this and all that.
Well, first of all, I'll talk about a balanced diet in the manner that you take mostly the animal proteins.
Okay.
Something like beef liver, okay, red meat. I know there's been a lot of controversy about red meat. Sometimes we weigh the benefit and risk ratio. In this case, during TB course of treatment, red meat will be most beneficial for you. Taking protein, something like egg or poultry, the chicken or turkey actually would be most preferably helpful. And in terms of vegetables, basically, I'm glad that nutrition offers something that is really available almost in most parts of the country.
Yeah.
Probably with the exception of the arid and semi-arid areas. Something like vegetable like spinach or broccoli, cabbages will give you the vitamins that are necessary for to keep your immune system at strength, at full strength. Carrots. Those are some of the things that are readily available in the market nowadays. Because of ease of transport in most areas in the country, you're able to access these foods. And the most simple thing, water. People take water so simple. Sometimes you are in town and you say you can't waste your money to buy water. Water is essential. Actually, there is a side effect of one of the medications used in TB, rifampicin, an antibiotic. It gives the urine orange color because definitely the drug is orange in color. So the elimination process, because once your body uses this drug, your body needs to take out the residues of this blood. These residues are very dangerous to your body. And one of the ways that the body eliminates the waste is through urine. For the body to make urine, you require water, a lot of it, to filter out that waste. Because if you have a small amount of water in your body, there will be a lot of concentration of these residues, and some might remain in the bloodstream. So it's good to hydrate well. I'll talk about taking above 3 liters in 24 hours to keep your body in fighting shape. Because definitely at the end of the day, even the TB medications are dependent on your weight. You're not just given TB medications, take. It is calculated based on the weight you have.
Okay.
And having a good muscle mass, which is related to protein intake, will give you a better fighting chance. So the drugs, normally they increase your body metabolic rate. That is something like, it's like when normally, when you do work of, for example, let's say, you carry equipment from point A to point B, you're a transport person. Imagine being added another task. On the same day, you're required to complete the task at the same time, but with extra task. So imagine all that weight, and you're consuming the same amount of nutrients. It won't work. Now your body will need a higher amount of energy to be able to carry out this task.
Okay.
This energy you can get from readily available foods, wheat, all grains, the things you get from your shambas at home, basically. Even if you are in a tight schedule, sometimes I don't advocate actually for doing processed foods because of issues with compliance with the, KEBS, but I advocate actually for having a kitchen garden. If you live in Nairobi, try to buy food from Mama Mboga around the market, please. Especially for vegetables, meat, chicken, I would advocate that you try to buy outside, like butchery or Mama Mboga, because the supermarket products, as we've seen KEBS admitting earlier, there's a lot of controversy about that discussion I won't get into right now, but definitely, Mboga has fresh foods. And number two, Mboga doesn't have enough money to buy the strong drugs that are used to preserve these foods from going fall. Okay? So definitely, you need nutritious food. A nutritious food you find from farm produce. So.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
So the idea here is that it's not expensive to, manage, especially when it comes to the question of nutrients and nutrition.
Right.
Daktari, from the messages that we have received, one of them saying that, of course, they had to go through tough times, undertaking the medication. I think I asked this question. I hope that we could get it even better, or in terms of understanding what are the current treatment options and just how effective are they, and who gets who and what and all that.
Okay. I think for me to answer that, I need to go a little bit, give some background. One, I think we've concentrated on talking about one form of TB. It's also good to understand that we have different types of TB.
Right.
And I would want to tag this to in terms of where the TB is affecting. So you'd find the commonest the commonest form of TB is pulmonary tuberculosis that gets the lungs. But we know that you can get TB of any part of the body. You can get the TB of the abdomen, get the TB of the brain, anywhere. So and then the treatment also is dependent on one of the factors that determines the kind of treatment is where the TB is. For example, if you got a TB of the bone, the treatment will take longer than if you had TB of the lungs, for example. And I think these one of the our viewers today talked about TB for 8 months, and you hear Francis talking about 6 months.
Yeah.
So you will find some are taking for 6 months, especially pulmonary tuberculosis, and also 9 months, especially for the TB of the bone. So it depends with the kind of TB that you are treating. And the other thing also is in terms of the resistance patterns that person has. Just to coin this with what you're talking about, ile TB sugu. We also now the TB sugu or multi-drug resistant TB,
the MDR.
The MDR, exactly. The treatment also is slightly different from the other TB. And the difference is that the most drugged TB basically is somebody who is getting TB or the bacilli that is resistant to one or two of some of the core TB treatment medications that we have. Specifically, there is an antibiotic called rifampicin and isoniazid.
Oh, the one he was talking about, the one that
exactly turns the urine area. Exactly. So if the bacilli that you have is resistant, especially to those two antibiotics, one or both, then it is deemed resistant, because those are the main medications that are used for TB treatment. So if the person is resistant to those, then it means that you have to get another regimen that has other medications apart from those ones. And of course, the treatment for MDR is slightly longer. You may find people who are taking up to a year or so, So in terms of treatment, it depends with the type of TB you have, where you have, for example, if the TB of the bone different, and also the type of TB in terms of the resistance pattern.
What is the connection between this and HIV and AIDS? And maybe we need to understand that clearly.
Yes.
So that, people don't get lost out there, because there's a lot of myth, I would say.
Yes, in fact, that's a question from Wycliffe Arum. He says, ask the doctor how TB is related to HIV.
Exactly. I think our nutritionists are really labored a lot, and as mentioned, immunity many times. I think more than 20 times in when he's giving his views.
Right.
immunity is very important when it comes to containing illnesses, and specifically TB. And remember, when we talk about HIV, we know HIV is a condition that makes someone's immunity go low. You also mentioned something to do with latent TB. Latent TB is when you get exposed to TB, but you don't develop the disease, because your immunity is like a blanket covering you from the activation of the TB bacilli. Okay. But remember, when you have HIV, actually we talk about around 5 to the higher likelihood of someone who has HIV getting TB by around 5 to 20%. Okay. In other words, the people who have HIV positive are at a higher risk of getting TB because of their HIV status, because of their immunity, because again, the moment someone is HIV positive, and especially they are not on treatment, then you find if the immunity is low, then there is that reactivation of that TB now, and they get the active TB. But again, what we are saying is that it doesn't mean that if you're HIV positive, then you will get TB. Okay. The point is, we are saying, if someone is HIV positive, it is good to get treatment for HIV early, because it will help you prevent getting TB. So the connection here is that HIV lowers your immunity. And the moment your immunity is lowered, then you give TB a chance to wake up, become active, But again, the thing that I would want to take out there is that don't look at somebody who has TB and start debating. Okay. Because if anything, the people who have TB, most of them are actually HIV negative. The only thing we are saying is that if you have HIV, there's a higher chance of you getting TB, but does not mean, I've heard of this made a lot. It's not automatic that, someone is HIV, is TB positive, automatically they're HIV positive, That is not the case. Actually, many people that we have on TB are actually HIV negative.
Okay. Please, let me, just before we proceed, there's a few questions just on what he's saying. Yeah. First is, remember 1GB, the one who said champion, he really needed to hear your story. Right. So, anasema, I think nimelearn something from champion. Alafu kuna swali. Hajawahi ruka kumeza pills zake za TB, but amechanganya time. I'm quoting 1GB. Sijawahi ruka kumeza pills zangu za TB, but nimechanganya time. Sometimes earlier, sometimes late, kiasi. Am I still good to continue with the medication? This is a question from 1GB. That's question number one. Question number two is, it's actually a point from this other lady who had told us, Jane from Nakuru tells us, she got TB from hospital. Apparently, she was admitted in 204 for a few days in hospital, and she got back and then she went back. When she went back, they said she had TB and she got it from the hospital. Talk to us about where we can get, some of the other places we can get infected. Number three, this lady called Celestine Dege from Gilgil is a TB champion and survivor, just like you, got TB twice and won. Request to you is that the TB advocacy program can be continuous, so you can respond to that. And Doc said, Doc alisema TB inashika kila mahali. Very true. Isipokuwa tu nywele, meno na kucha haziwezi pata TB.
Lakini kuna effect, unakumbuka mwingine alisema nywele ilikuwa inakaa kama ya pusi. So you have to, eventually the effects are felt,
on the body somehow. Yeah. And then one more thing, just saying all the questions so you can answer all of them. There's also Celestine from Gilgil also says that we're told that TB leaves a scar in the lungs. First, is that true? Second, is that similar to somebody who has had COVID-19? And third, I think, is there a connection between COVID-19 and TB? Okay. Talk to us about that. And finally, Scholastica from, Scholastica, you didn't say where you're from. You said, if a pregnant mother has TB, when she gives birth, does the baby have TB? Second, and is a child given something called TPT? I don't know what that is. So many questions.
And we have 13 minutes max.
Please go. Anne Fraser, take it away.
All right.
The ones you can remember, I'll remind you of the rest.
So I'll go with the one for 1GB.
Right.
And he asked about the timings.
Timings, yeah.
We encourage the follow-up of the time because of the duration the drug takes in your body. We call it the time the drug takes to clear from the body. Right. It's a one day dose, one dose per day, meaning it is only in your body for 24 hours. The moment you either swallow it earlier or later, it means there's a point you have given bacteria time to continue multiplying, or you have overdosed yourself if you took before the 24 hours are over. So that's why we want you to stick on time, so that we are sure that the drug has already cleared from your body, and you don't give the bacteria the time to wake up and start multiplying all over again.
Okay.
Okay. There was also a question about where you can get infected. Is it true you can get infected in hospital?
Yes, you can get infected in the hospital because of the proximity. Sometimes, currently, we don't do isolation of our TB patient, and maybe Evelyn can talk about that. And why we don't do this is because of the stigma that it used to create a lot. So you find these patients sometimes are mixed in the ward. So assuming I have HIV, I'm in the ward where we have a TB patient next to me.
Right.
Chances are that I might leave the ward cured of whatever I went with, but have left with the bacteria of TB. Because what I would like telling people is we all have TB bacteria in our bodies.
Everyone.
We all have a TB infection, yes, in our lungs, because we have inhaled it in one way or the other. Because it's there, it's all over. But the only reason you don't have TB disease right now, you're not coughing, is because your immunity is still strong. So this person lying in that hospital bed with a low immunity, they already had maybe a load of bacteria from somewhere, and then they get another load from somebody else who are lying next to them in the ward, then they get a higher chances of developing into disease, and then they start getting the symptoms. So yes, you can get TB from the hospital. Other places you can get from the TB is like what he was saying in the clubs. In our matatus, we have drivers who have TB, and maybe they're not even encouraging their people to open the windows when they are traveling. So you find the driver is there, the makanga is there, coughing, the dirishas are all closed. So you can be sure if you're there with a low immunity, you might live with a bacteria that might lead to a disease maybe in a few months' time.
Okay.
Any congregation that we have congestion, bad ventilation, bad lighting, and this is common in our clubs, especially, where most of our men are going for evening.
Evening
moments.
Please don't feel targeted. The other question was around connection between TB and COVID.
They both affect the lungs, yes, and the symptoms are almost similar. And why we actually got a hitch when it came to COVID and TB during that time, 2021, is because most people refused to go to the hospital. Because if I have a cough, I'll be told I have COVID and I will be isolated. So majority of the people decided I'll stay at home with my cough so that I don't go to the hospital. So there is that connection because of the symptoms. But generally, it's important to know that COVID is a virus, while TB is a bacteria. So the difference is there, but the symptoms are almost similar because you have a cough, you'll have a fever. Some may lose appetite with COVID, plus with the TB, they will still lose their appetite. So the two diseases are quite connected.
Okay. All right, and then the question about the child, pregnancy, TB and pregnancy, can it be transmitted to the child? And second, something called TBT or TPT, perhaps?
Yes, a mother can transmit TB to a child. There's the placenta from the mother to when the baby is still growing. And these are children sometimes are born with a very low birth weight. Maybe the child has been born at term, but their birth weight is not okay, meaning this child has a problem. Those are children, especially if you take a history of the mother having had a cough, of the father, or the mother having had symptoms that suggest they could have TB, then we start suspecting TB at that point to that child. And this is a child who is taken through now the investigation. They're investigated for TB, and in case they have TB, they are treated at that point at birth. And we have had a number of cases of that. The other thing that we do for these kids, if you are born from a mother who has TB, and maybe the child is not without any symptoms, the child has good weight and everything is okay, then we give them TB preventive therapy. Because the mother will be breastfeeding. This is a child, maybe the mother had already not been started on treatment, and they will be breastfeeding. So there is a chance that this baby may be infected from the mother by the fact that they are close when they are breastfeeding. So this child gets the TB preventive therapy for 3 months, so that to make sure that for this duration the mother is still having active disease, the child is protected from getting the disease, and this will be a protection that will take the child for almost around 5 years. Yeah, so that they don't develop TB from what the mother had.
All right. Let's have Evelyn join in. Dr. I know you would want to say something more in relation to medication and perhaps all the questions that have been asked. But quickly, Evelyn, in relation to engaging the communities, for creation of awareness and these concerns of stigma, as earlier mentioned by Anne.
Yeah, let me first talk about stigma. Stigma is currently one of the biggest barriers to access we have realized that TB is actually more stigmatized than HIV.
Okay.
And here are the reasons. See, when you have HIV, there's totally no physical signs that you have HIV, especially if you're on medication.
Yeah.
You take your medication, no one will ever know that you have HIV. But when you have HIV, I mean, when you have TB, you have had all the symptoms. And again, the association with HIV. So when people feel like or suspect themselves that they have TB, they fear going to hospital. One, fear of being told that they have HIV, and I'll talk about that more. Also, the fact that we know TB is infectious, just through a cough. So people feel like once I go and I'll go coughing, and people, when I cough, people cover their mouths or they run away. They feel so stigmatized. So I want to say this. We need really to stop stigmatizing people, because like Dr. said, once you're put on treatment, after 2 weeks, you are likely not to be infectious. Of course, the doctor has to confirm that you're no longer infectious.
Okay.
But on standard, you stop being infectious. That means if you're working with somebody who has TB and they are on treatment, they are not going to infect you. So instead of running away from them, what you need to do is support them. Support them to take the medication, support them with the nutrition, whatever support that it is that they need, you need to embrace them. Let us reduce stigma. We have heard of so many people who lived with HIV for even 10 years. But when they got TB, they refused to even go to hospital because of that stigma that is around TB. We have also seen people being sacked from their jobs because of TB. So what people do when they have TB, they will not even tell their employers because they're fearing that they're going to be to lose their jobs. So we are really, really advocating for addressing stigma and reducing stigma. Number 2, we want to remove TB from being a preserve of the Ministry of Health and want to bring other sectors. Like we have had, TB is in matatus, TB is in schools, it's in universities, it's all over the place. So we need to ensure that other sectors recognize what is their role in addressing TB. I'll give an example. The schools have a policy of deworming children, I think 3 times in 1 year, or 4 times or something like that. If we can have a policy where the Ministry of Education will also say we shall be screening our schools maybe once per year. So that would catch anybody who has TB early, early enough to even prevent new infections. We should do that with all sectors, the matatus. Let the transport sector take responsibility of whatever they can do within their core mandate to address TB. For example, when we talk, there's a lot of infections because of the structure of our matatus. They are small. We are 11 of us or 14 of us sitting together. And of course, we don't open windows for all the reasons we have. Supposing the Ministry of Transport decided to have matatus or public transport vehicles which have maybe an opening, like the meshed sort of an opening, so that you don't have to open the window. There is already proper ventilation. Of course, that will come from the Ministry of Transport. Let's think about housing. We have policies on the standard of ventilation a residential house should have. Are we following those policies? So we also need to ensure that the Ministry of Construction is also being keen on what is it are we doing to perpetuate TB and what should we do to reduce infections of TB. So I keep saying everyone has a responsibility in TB.
Right.
I want to bring a point you brought about the scar.
To chase, yes.
Yes, the scar, the lung scar. We have seen people who go to seek for jobs, abroad, Middle East. When they get there, they get screened again, they get tested. And when they get a scar, they say that person had TB, right? Or have TB. And they are sent back. Again, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs need to come in and sensitize those countries about TB so that a scar is not a reason to send somebody back who sold even their farm to go and look for jobs outside the country. And I want to say the final thing. Leadership is very key. If you remember at the time, HIV, one of the reasons that really brought us to where we are is because of good political commitment. We have it here in Kenya. Of course, we have a parliamentary TB caucus in Parliament. that their sole responsibility is talking about TB.
Right.
We need increased political commitment, even from the highest political office in the land.
Right, beautiful. Oh man, parting shots as we come to a close. We begin with you, Stephen. Sarah. As we come to a close, basically, what would be your parting shot tonight?
Well, my parting shot is definitely just to echo what Evelyn has just said, that TB is preventable, and if you have TB, it is curable.
Right.
So it's no big deal. It's just like any other disease.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yes. Excellent.
Dr. Ari.
Yeah, I think mine will come from the theme of this year, or TB Day. And we are talking about, we are saying, yes, let's end TB. But whose statement is that? Is it the government? Is it Evelyn's? Is it Medic's? Whose is it? I think one of the things that we want to encourage is, as an individual, look at what you can do as a person. Do not look at the government. Don't look at yourself. There are very simple things that we can do that actually can facilitate this process of ending TB. The simple things as cough etiquette, simple things as taking your child for BCG when they are very early, the simple things like starting medication very early, ventilation, making sure that you have a good immunity. Those are simple things that we can do. So as we say we end TB, what are you doing as a person? Be you a doctor, be you a journalist, whoever you are, because for everybody, there's something you can do.
It is true that you end up with a scar in the lung?
Actually, remember, the lung tissue gets affected by the TB, and sometimes it may heal by scarring.
Right.
So you may have, especially for a very somebody who has had very severe TB, you may have what you call fibrosis. Basically, after like the infection, then you have some scarring in the lungs. True.
All right.
Quick one, Dr. Ari, very quick, please.
So I can say that your health is your responsibility.
All right.
It is you to go to the hospital.
Okay.
Because sometimes it's not possible for us to reach everybody who comes to the hospital, who does not come to the hospital.
Okay.
But if you have had this conversation, please go to the hospital that is near to you. Seek treatment, seek screen for TB, and that way you're going to make sure that you're free of TB and you're okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Champion, sentensi moja au mbili kwa ambao wanakutizama sasa hivi.
Inasema mtu akipata ako na TB, akunywe dawa, afuate maagizo ya daktari, TB watu wanapona.
Kabisa. Asante sana. Thank you. I couldn't have said it better myself. I know we are out of time. Real quick, thank you so much for everyone who sent in their message. The ones who sent in their questions and were not able to answer because of time. I will actually hand this over to the doctors just after, and they'll just stand by on WhatsApp. You'll get your answers. Thank you so much, Jane from Nakuru. Thank you, Sadik Njeru from Kirinyaga County. Thank you, what's your name? Sorry, there's so many people. Somebody called Tax Collector, somebody called Celestine Dege from Gilgil. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure to do this with you. Thank you so much. My name is Victor Moyakane. May God bless you.
Indeed, appreciations to Evelyn Kibuchi, who is the Chief National Coordinator, Stop TB Partner Kenya, Board Member, International Union Against Tuberculosis and Lung Disease. Thank you so much, Mom. As well as Francis Mukirai, who's next to Evelyn, who's a TB survivor. Thank you so much for sharing your story tonight. Indeed, a story of hope. And as well, and Freshia Minor, TB clinician. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Mom. As well as the medic of the day, Martin Baya, who's a medic at AIDS Healthcare Foundation, AHF Kenya. Thank you so much. And lastly, Stephen Sewe, clinical dietitian, or better yet, a proper nutritionist. We have to close it at this very point. My name is Linda Alela, and once again, we have appreciated your feedback, and we look forward to see you again next Tuesday. Of course, George sends his message as well. Kusema,